Okay, good morning everyone. End of the first parak. Mem Aleph Amud Aleph. Toshma. 7th line. We're talking about the opinion, or the opinions of whether you can make something usher for somebody else. So Gemara says Toshma. It's going to bring a challenge to the opinion that you cannot make something usher. We're going to seem to see that you can forbid something for somebody else. Hamitame. If I go ahead and I contaminate your produce with tuma, well, regular produce wouldn't be such a big deal, unless you're makbid to eat it when it's kadosh, but let's say it's truma, so if it's tameh, if I make it tameh, now you can no longer eat it. For hamidame, if I mix truma into ordinary produce, even though the ordinary produce is not tameh, but now you can't eat it if you're not a kohen, and if you were going to sell it, your audience just became a lot smaller because now you need to sell it to a kohen. V'haminasech, and somebody who makes somebody else's wine, yayin nesach, that means I use your wine, assuming we're talking about two Jews here, I use your wine to perform for avodah zarah, to pour to avodah zarah, which makes it aser v'hana. B'shogeg pater, if I do it b'shogeg, how exactly do you do this b'shogeg? Well, if I know that I'm tameh, but I don't know that the produce that I'm making tameh is truma, or I don't realize that the two things I'm mixing together, one of them is truma, or I didn't realize that pouring wine to avodah zarah is forbidden, or makes the wine forbidden, or I thought that it was forbidden, I knew it was forbidden, but I didn't know that it was your wine. I thought I was pouring my own wine to avodah zarah. Says the Gemara, b'shogeg pater, so if it's b'shogeg, I don't need to pay you for ruining your items, because again here you lost the value of being able to eat it, i.e. to be able to sell it to many people, the value went down. B'mezid chayiv, if I do it on mezid, then I'm chayiv to pay. Now, it's interesting because here there's no real physical damage. Usually when we're talking about hezek, we're talking about real hezek. But over here, there's no physical damage. However, Chazal, right, the Chachamim penalize you even though there wasn't real physical damage. Usually when I'm chayiv to pay you for damage, it's physical damage. Even though here there's no physical damage, but Lamaisa, since I made you have a loss, so if it's on purpose, then I'm going to be chayiv to pay you. B'mezid chayiv. If it's mezid, it's chayiv. So what do you see? You see that I'm chayiv to pay you for making your truma, or we should say your wine nesach. And at the end of the day, though, if I can't forbid somebody else's wine to them, so then why am I chayiv? Clearly the fact that I'm chayiv shows that your wine is now forbidden. And at the end of the day, if your wine is forbidden, so then you see that I'm allowed to make your wine forbidden. It's a little bit different. The Rishonim point out the case of mitame and midame is a little bit different because there, even if Lamaisa we do or don't penalize me, at the end of the day, there's nothing you could do to fix it. It means if we say that you don't forbid something to somebody else, even if you would hold that I can't forbid your stuff by serving it to avodah zarah, at the end of the day, if I mix your truma together with your regular produce, there's nothing we can do. We can't say, oh, well, you can't forbid it to somebody else. Lamaisa, the truma is mixed with other things, and there's nothing we could do about it. Over here, if we say you can't forbid the stuff, so even though you served avodah zarah, Lamaisa, we're not going to prohibit the item. But you see clearly over here that b'mezid chayav, that by going ahead and pouring your wine to avodah zarah, I ruined it, and I'm chayav to pay you for the loss of the value of that wine. So it seems like I can ruin something for somebody else. Hachanami de islay shutfus bigava. So they're going to answer no. They're going to answer that no, we have a partnership, and since we have a partnership, it's partly my wine. If it's partly my wine, then I can ruin it. If it wasn't partly my wine, and Hachanami, the other Tanaim would argue that if it wasn't my wine, then I would not be able to ruin it. Says the Gemara Kitanai. We see this similar machlokas Tanaim elsewhere. That what? I'm not going to spoil it for you, but the Gemara is going to answer. It's a different case because here a non-Jew, an Ovei Kochavim, is pouring it. But at this point in the Gemara's question, or in their assumption, they're assuming that if a non-Jew, if an Ovei Kochavim takes your stuff and pours it to avodah zarah, it would be the equivalent of a Jew taking your stuff and pouring it to avodah zarah, and therefore whatever the halacha is there, the halacha would be here. So we see that Ovei Kochavim shenisach yenush yisrael shelo b'fnei avodas kochavim. If an idolater takes your wine and he pours it not in the presence of avodah zarah, and obviously kal vachomer if he did it in the presence of avodah zarah, so he just takes your wine and he mixes it l'shem avodah zarah, but there's no avodah zarah there. So then what? Asaro, nevertheless, he's prohibited the wine for benefit, which you clearly see that what? That an idolater, i.e. someone else, can prohibit your wine by doing something to it. Says in Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir, Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, which is the equivalent of the 3 Tanaim here that we have, Matir Nasel Mibnei Shnei Dvarim. It's mutter for 2 reasons in this case. Echad she'ein menaschen yain shel ela bifnei avodas kochavim. First of all, the fact that he does it and there's no idol there, that's one thing. And even if there was an idol there, ve'echad sheyochal lomar lo, the Jew can say to him or can say to the rabbis that are forbidding him, lo kol hemcha shetes or yeni laonsi. You can't go ahead and you can't make my wine prohibited against my will. So you see over here that these last 2 Tanaim hold that in general, you cannot go ahead and you cannot make something that belongs to me prohibited. So you see the 2 opinions. The Tanakama seems to say that he can prohibit the wine to you. And the second 2 opinions would be like the 3 rabbis that we had, 3 Chachamim that we had over here, who said that he can provide, that he cannot go ahead and forbid it to you. Says the Gemara, Rav Nachman, Rav Amar, and Rav Yitzchak Amri, the 3 who say that again, you cannot go ahead and you cannot forbid the wine to somebody else. Even according to the Tanakama that says, don't bring me a proof, right? Because what did we say? We had the 3 and we had Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, I can forbid something that belongs to you. The 3 said you cannot forbid. We seem to have another brisa which seems to say that there's a machlokes Tanaim, that the Tanakama is like Rav Huna, that you can forbid for somebody else, even though there it's a case of avodas kochavim, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba and Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira would say like Rav Nachman, Rav Amram, and Rav Yitzchak that you cannot forbid something for somebody else. Rav Nachman, Rav Amram, and Rav Yitzchak will say to you, no, that case is different, and even the Tanakama would agree to us in general. Why? Even according to the Tanakama there, who says that in that brisa, a person, i.e. the Ovei Kochavim, can make the wine forbidden to me, even though it's not his. What would he say? He would say, Hani mili kusi, that's only by a kusi. Why? Because what's the kusi doing when he serves avodah zarah? He's serving avodah zarah. However, aval Yisrael itzaure kamechavein. But if you have a Jew who goes ahead and serves avodah zarah with my property, what do we assume? We assume that he's going and he's just trying to upset me. He's not actually serving avodah zarah. No Jew's going to serve avodah zarah. So if a Jew goes ahead and serves avodah zarah with my wine, we assume that he's just playing a joke on me. He just wants to forbid my stuff, and we're not going to forbid it. Now it's interesting because again, we were talking about in general, can I forbid something to somebody else? So it seems like they would hold that when it comes to avodah zarah, the answer is what? They held across the board, the answer is no, you cannot forbid. Why over here does it seem like you can? That's by a kusi. By a kusi, that's where the Tanakama, seemingly the 3 of them would hold that even by a kusi, it won't ruin it. But they are saying that, okay, at least the Tanakama, he says dafka by a kusi. But even the Tanakama would agree to us that in general, a Jew cannot ruin the property of another Jew when it comes to avodah zarah. They would hold maybe that if there was a case where it wasn't avodah zarah related, then they would agree that what? That the Tanakama would say that you can forbid, or maybe he can't. Maybe the Tanakama would agree that you can't forbid. It's unclear. But at least when it comes to avodah zarah, we have 2 tzadim, which we're trying to make into 1 tzad. We originally thought we have 2 tzadim. Rav Huna says when it comes to avodah zarah, so 1 Jew can ruin it for another Jew. These 3 said that 1 Jew cannot ruin it for another Jew. Now the Gemara is suggesting that these 3 would suggest that even the Tanakama, maybe even Rav Huna, but even the Tanakama would agree that in general a Jew cannot forbid it for another Jew. Why? Because the Metzius is that when a Jew comes ahead and serves avodah zarah, he's not really serving avodah zarah. And it's only a kusi who's actually serving avodah zarah that can forbid my wine for myself. Says Gemara Tashma. Another challenge to these 3 who hold that in general 1 Jew, because again, that's not Pashup Pshat. Pashup Pshat is that Rav Huna and the Tanakama would hold that whether it's a kusi or not, a Jew can forbid somebody else's stuff to him. Now this is an interesting tashma, because this seems to imply that the 2 of us are holding a knife, and the animal only belongs to one of us. Right? Because the Gemara could have clearly said what? That it's shutfus. If it's shutfus, so then you ruin it by definition, because if one of them has the wrong intent, then it's going to be a problem. But the Gemara is not making that suggestion here. So the Gemara is assuming that the animal belongs to me, and we can learn that the case is that the animal belongs to me, and you grab on my knife, and you shech l'shem avodah zarah, and what do we say? Shchitas psula. But according to you guys, the 3 of you, Rav Nachman, Rav Amram, Rav Yitzchak, you just said that if somebody shechs for somebody else, we assume that a Jew is not shechting what? We assume that a Jew is not really shechting for avodah zarah, and lemaisa again, it shouldn't be forbidden. Again, based on the Gemara suggestion, now they might agree that in general you can ruin something for somebody else, but we don't assume in general that what? We don't assume that a Jew shechs for avodah zarah. So why in this case is shchitas psula if you're holding on to my knife and it's my animal? Even if you claim to be shechting for avodah zarah, we should assume that you're just playing with me and you just want to ruin my animal. Says Gemara, no, we're dealing with the Yisrael mummer. They agree that if you're dealing with the Yisrael mummer, then you have to assume that he is shechting avodah zarah. So enachanami, if a regular Jew shechs l'shem, if I take your animal and I shech l'shem yuchud avodah zarah, we assume I'm just playing with you and I can't forbid it. But yeah.
Your action itself makes him a shuvah, doesn't it?
So the Gemara is going to suggest something like that. Tashma hamitame v'amidame v'aminaseach b'shogeg pater b'mezid chayiv. Again, you see that what? That b'mezid it's chayiv. Why is it b'mezid chayiv? If I go ahead and I make your yayin into yayin nesach, why don't we assume that I'm just playing with you? Hachanami b'Yisrael mummer. Says the Gemara, what the rabbi is saying, Amalei Ravacha b'rei Rav Ravashi hidru bo v'kiva lav hasra amai. Let's say they warn him now. So you want to tell me a regular Jew, he plays around. So l'maisa, if a regular Jew, if I go ahead and I take your animal, I shechted avodah zarah, it's not us or the animal. Because, well, we assume that I'm playing around with you. Let's say I was warned beforehand. Then you can't say I'm just playing around with you. Says no. By definition, if you're warned, then you're a mummer. So it sounds like it's saying no. That a guy who's warned, then he's a mummer. By definition, like you're saying. But if the guy just says, I'm shachni l'shem avodah zarah, then he's playing around with his friend, and l'maisa, it's not going to be a problem. Again, it's unclear whether at the end of the day the three sages would agree. It seems like, again, Pashup Shah was that they would say you can never ruin something for somebody else. But now it's coming out that it seems like they're limiting that and saying, well, when we said that you can't ruin it for somebody else, it's when it's avodah zarah, and it's dafka because we assume that he's not really doing it avodah zarah. What does that imply? That implies that you can ruin something for somebody else if we know that you're doing it for avodah zarah. That's where the Gemara is a little bit interesting, because it sounds like now, if I have a Yisrael mummer, so one can suggest that according to those three chachamim, if I have a Yisrael mummer and I know that he's shechting l'shem avodah zarah, maybe at the end of the day they would agree that what? Maybe would agree that it would be able to be aseret for somebody else. That's where it's unclear at the end of the day. I don't know at halacha l'maisa. I'm not sure halacha l'maisa. It's a good question.
When you go to a winery,
yeah,
there's so makbid that only the mashgiach can touch anything.
Again, it sounds. Again, we have to look it up, but there is an ein mishpat by litzurei kamechavin. So the question is, unless we know better, it sounds like we have to assume that a Jew is only playing. It sounds like we're giving him the benefit of the doubt. That if a Jew forbids something for you, we're giving him the benefit of the doubt. But l'maisa, if we know that he's hitter atzmo l'misa, if we know that he's a mummer, then in achanami he would ruin it for you. Zak the Mishnah. That's when you slaughter l'shem avodah zarah. Do we count it as if he's actually doing it, or do we assume that he's just playing around with you? It depends what he is. However, this is a different case. Now we're talking about a guy, myself. Where am I and where am I not allowed to shecht? I.e., even if I'm not shechting avodah zarah, where is it going to be maris ayin, where it may look like I'm shechting it l'shem avodah zarah? Ein shochtin lo l'toch yamin v'lo l'toch naris. I can't shecht into a sea or into a river because I might be shechting to the gods of the sea and the river. V'lo l'toch kelim. I can't shecht into a keli. Why not? Why can I shecht into a vessel? Now, why would I be doing this, by the way? I'm doing this because I don't necessarily go to a slaughterhouse to shech my animal that I want to eat for dinner tonight. I'm shechting to my house. And I prefer, or my wife would prefer, for me not to shecht it directly onto the kitchen floor, or even into the backyard. And this time of year, it's freezing. So what do? So I shecht it into a kli. I can't do that. Why? Because what do we assume? We're worried that you're collecting the blood, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to throw it onto an idolatrous mizbeach. I could slaughter into a small pool of water in my backyard. We'll see why. Now let's say I'm on a sfina, so now I have a little bit of a problem. Now I'm on a boat, and I want to shecht an animal. What do? I can't shecht it into the sea because then I'm shechting to the sea. I can't shecht it on the boat because it's going to get dirty. I can't shecht it into vessels because what? Then it looks like I'm collecting the blood to serve avodah zarah. I could shecht it al gabe kelim. I could shecht it on top of vessels. What does that mean? Rashi says, I don't shecht it into kelim. I shecht it al gabe kelim, which means I'm not collecting it. I'm shechting it into a kli, which is going to run into the sea. So I sort of make like a little bridge, or I'm basically going to shecht it onto the kli, but the kli is going to run over the side of the boat, and it's going to go straight into the water. So since it's only indirectly going into the water, it's only indirectly going into the sea, it shows that I'm not shechting directly into the sea, because if I was shechting to the god of the sea, I wouldn't indirectly shecht him, I would shecht directly into it.
It's not good enough to see that person's actually shechting k'halacha as a non-core avodah zarah.
No, because I could shech.
Don't need any of that stuff.
But I could shech la'alacha. Again, I want to be. I'm trying to shech l'avodah zarah. I don't want to like make an announcement. I'm shechting l'avodah zarah. So we assume that he's doing it right, so that he fools people. But we have to be choshesh that.
He's in the backyard.
Okay, somebody might see you.
It's maridayim, but it's always the case with maridayim.
You can't do a lot of things in your backyard, right? Even today, you can't do things in your backyard.
The fact that he's going out of his way to shech halachically, which is a big tircha,
Right.
And then you think that that same guy is doing that hard work in order to do avodah zarah, when he can simply just do 80 other things.
Right. No, I hear what you're saying. It's
But if somebody's
interesting.
standing
But again,
around singing
if somebody's watching, so he
songs,
might think that he's doing it. He doesn't know that, as the guy who's watching doesn't necessarily know he's shechting exactly the right way. He doesn't, right. It's an interesting point. But again, it sounds like the Gemara was worried that this was commonplace. Ein shochten leguma kolika, you can't shecht into a pit. Why? Because that's what the tzdukim used to do for idolatrous purposes. Aval ose guma tobeda v'shel shikanis adam matocha. So you want to shecht at home, what do? You make a pit in your house, and you can shecht into it. Now the Gemara is going to suggest, well, you just said you can't shecht into a pit at all. But you can make a pit in your house. Uvashuk lo yasakein, you can't make a pit in the shuk. Why? Shlo yichake et tzdukim. Because if you do so you seem to support the tzdukim who would shecht into a pit in Rishus HaRabim. Ein shoktin lo l'toch, you can't slaughter into a sea, or because you might be slaughtering into the god of the sea or the river. Ma'ishal l'toch yamim delo. Da'amri l'sara diyama kashachet. Again, you might be slaughtering to the sar of the yam. L'toch uga shamayim nami. So why can you slaughter into a pool of water? Amri l'bavua kashachet. Yes, there may not be no god of this pool of water, but you might be shechting to yourself. If you have a nice, beautiful pool of water and you can see your reflection in it, then maybe you're shechting to yourself because you love yourself. It's like shechting in front of a mirror. Amarava, you're right. Ba'kurim shanu. Again, so Rabbi, there was obviously a concern that people were shechting l'avodah zarah. Us, we can't relate. It wasn't like, what are you thinking over here? But they had a chashash that people would go into a pool of water, would shech next to a pool of water because they wanted to shech to themselves. And we're saying, you're right, you're dealing with water that is dirty. So dirty water where you can't see reflection, then we don't have any chashash that he's not shechting to a god because there's no god of a small pool, and B, he's not shechting to himself because there's no reflection. If there was a pool of water that had a reflection, it would be also to shech there. Ein shoktin leguma. You can't shecht into a pit at all, but you can shecht into a pit in your house. What does that mean? No, the first one's talking about a guma shebashuk. You can't do that because that's what the tzdukim did. But a guma in your house you can do. The Sefer says it seems like the first part is not dealing with a shuk. So the first part which says ein shochlin leguma, but you can make a pit, that's not in the shuk, that's talking about in your house. So what's the pshat? Can you or can you? Elam arav v'hachi kamar. Ein shochlin leguma kolikar. You can't shecht into a pit anywhere, even by your house, because that looks like what? That looks like marasayin. V'arotza, it looks like you're shechting l'avodah zarah. V'arotza l'naker chatzera. So what do you do, l'maisa? If you want to shecht in your house and you want to keep it clean, so what do? You can't shecht into a pool because it's clear. You can't shecht into a pit because it looks like avodah zarah. So what is it? Keitzadu oseh. What should you do? Says the Gemara, oseh makom chutz laguma v'shochet. Again, you should make, as he says, a little crevice outside the pit, slaughter into the crevice, v'dam shoses v'yorei leguma, and then it'll trickle into the pit, indirectly into the pit, similar to what the sea we said. You make a little thing going overboard. If you're shechting indirectly into the sea, you're not shechting l'avodah zarah. If you're shechting indirectly into a pit, you're not shechting l'avodah zarah. V'ashuk le'yasachin. I should do this in the shuk. So I really don't want to get myself dirty. I don't want to get my yard dirty, so go shecht in the shuk. You can't shecht directly into a pit in the shuk, so shecht indirectly into a pit. Says the Gemara, shelo yichak et atzdukim. No, you can't shecht into directly in a pit, indirectly in the street. Why? Because we know that people are not usually concerned with keeping the street clean. So they're not going to assume, in your house, if they see you shechting indirectly, they're going to assume you're not shechting avodah zarah, you're shechting to keep clean, and you're doing it next to the thing, and you're dafka going out of your way to keep it clean, so you're going into a crevice, into the pit, and that's why you're shechting not avodah zarah. But in the street, they're not going to assume you're shechting into the crevice to keep it clean. Who cares if the street is clean? You're shechting it into the crevice, even though you're shechting it indirectly, you're still shechting it l'shem avodah zarah. So you can never shecht even indirectly into a pit in the shuk. There's another way. If you want to shecht on a boat, you could either shecht, like we said, onto a thing that runs into the sea, or you could shecht, it's not so easy. I mean, it's easy if you're dealing with a chicken, I guess, but if you're dealing with a goat, you have to hold the goat over the side of the boat and shecht it. And then the blood will drip on the sides of the boat. Again, it's going indirectly into the sea because it's not going straight into the water. It's interesting. Why can't you do it in the shuk? Because they might think you're serving avodah zarah. What's that isser of they might think you're serving avodah zarah of maris ayin v'chuk seim lo selechu? You can't go in their ways. The Maisa, people are going to think that you're serving avodah zarah. Don't do things that the idolatrous nations do. If somebody actually slaughters into a pit, whether he slaughters into a pit in your house or in the street, even if I know that I'm not doing avodah zarah. If I see somebody slaughtering into a pit, I need to be choshesh that he's serving avodah zarah. So what do? I need to look into it. I need to check if he's serving avodah zarah or not. Even if he does it in the street, if he does it into a pit, even indirectly in the street, I got to go look into his background. I got to see if he's an avodah zarah server. If he is, then I know that he's first of all chayav for serving avodah zarah. But B, I can't eat any of his food. I can't eat his wine. I can't eat his food. L'maisa, that's the nafkamina for me. Okay, the last mishnah in the parak is a little bit complicated to understand, but it's basically talking about something very interesting. We know that if you have a consecrated animal, that means you were mekadesh an animal. If you have a consecrated animal, it's asur to shech that outside of the base of Mikdash, and if you do, you chayav kares, shchutei chutz. But you're allowed to obviously shecht an unconsecrated animal outside the base of Mikdash. You want to shecht an animal to eat, you can shecht it. The case the Mishnah is dealing with is where I took an unconsecrated animal and I shechted it l'shem a korban. So I took a regular animal that wasn't consecrated and I shechted it l'shem ola. Well, it's a quasi problem, quasi not. On one end, I'm not chayav kares because it's not shchutei chutz because it wasn't consecrated. The Mishnah is going to suggest indirectly that I'm actually going to be yotzei bringing an ola. I was yotzei bringing an ola even though I didn't bring it in the base of Mikdash. I was yotzei an ola. But now what happens to that meat? Well, seemingly I should be able to eat that meat. But what's the problem? If somebody sees me shechting the ola outside the base of Mikdash, what are they going to think it is? If they hear me saying l'shem yichud ola, what are they going to think? They're going to think that I took a consecrated animal and I shechted it outside the base of Mikdash. They're going to think, first of all, that I'm chayav kares. They're going to think, second of all, that I wasn't yotzei my ola. And third, most importantly for other people, is that they're going to think that they could eat the meat. Because they're going to see me eating the meat. Nobody's doing anything to me. They're going to see me eating the meat. They're going to assume that I can A, shecht consecrated animals outside the base of Mikdash, and B, I can eat the meat of consecrated animals that were shechted outside the base of Mikdash, which is obviously not true. Because A, you're chayav kares for shechting consecrated animals outside the base of Mikdash, and B, the meat is forbidden. So it sounds like the Mishnah is going to suggest that even though I should be shechting in the base of Mikdash, l'maisa, in general, and ola, if I shecht an unconsecrated ola outside the base of Mikdash, I was yotzei my chiyuv to bring an ola. But Chazal are going to penalize me and say you cannot eat that meat, even though quote unquote mid'al raisa it's mutter. You cannot eat that meat because somebody who's watching may think that it's consecrated meat, may think it's okay to shech consecrated animals outside the base of Mikdash, and may think it's okay to eat animals that were consecrated that were shech outside the base of Mikdash, may think it's okay to eat them. Says Gemara, shochei l'shem ola. If I shecht outside the base of Mikdash, l'shem ola, an unconsecrated animal. If it's consecrated, not to talk about. Shchutei chutz, aser, am chayav kares. L'shem zvachim, what's that? A shlamim. L'shem asham taloi. What's an asham taloi? That's not a chatas. That's an asham which I bring where I may have sinned. Rashi gives an interesting example where I had bia with somebody and I wasn't, now I'm not sure if it was my wife or somebody that was aser to me. Or I ate 2 pieces of meat. I thought they were both mutter fat, and then it ends up that there were witnesses who say one of those pieces was chaylev. I don't know which one I ate because they look exactly the same. So it's possible that I did the sin. If I find out that I ate the chaylev, I need to bring a chatas. But until I find out whether I ate chaylev or not, I go ahead and I have to bring an asham taloi, which will be hanging, quote unquote, until we find out whether I actually sinned or not. So a chatas, an ola, a shlamim, an asham taloi, l'shem pesach. If I shecht an animal, l'shem korban pesach, l'shem toda. If I have to bring a korban toda, and I shecht an animal, l'shem toda, shchita so psula. So all of those shchitas are pasul. Rabbi Yehuda machshir. Rabbi Shimon, is machshir. He says we're not worried about this idea of marasayin. Shnai mochzin besakin v'shochtin. The case we had already. Echel l'shemecha v'echel mikolei v'echel l'shem davar kasha shchita so psula. If one of them has the wrong intention, it's going to be pasul. Hashoche l'shem chatas. If, however, outside the base of Mikdash, take an unconsecrated animal and I shechta l'shem chatas, l'shem asham vadai. That's like a chatas. That's 5 sins: asham meila, asham gzelos, asham shivcha charufa, asham nazir, asham mitzora. All these things where I have to bring an asham. L'shem meiser, l'shem bechor. If I shechta l'shem bechor outside the base of Mikdash, l'shem meiser, l'shem tmura, where I had another animal that was what? That I substituted this animal. Now both of them have to be brought. L'shem tmura, shechitas okshera. Then my shechita is kosher and I'm allowed to eat it. Why? What's the difference? So as we'll see in the Gemara, the difference is that in the first case, those are all cases. Let's see, Zaklal. Kol davar shenidar v'nidar v'ashoche l'shmo aser. Anything that is shechted as a neder or nedava, then if I shechted, it's going to be aser. V'she'eno nidar v'nidar v'ashoche l'shmo kasher. But if it's not, if it cannot be brought voluntarily, then it's going to be kasher. So what do you think the difference is? If I bring something that can be brought voluntarily, and I bring it outside the base of Mikdash, an unconsecrated animal, even though it's kosher, I can't eat it. But if I bring something that's not voluntary, that I have to bring, like a chatas, like an asham, like a bechor, like a meiser, like a tzmur, and I bring that outside the Beis HaMikdash, if it's not consecrated, then I'm allowed to eat it. What's the difference? What would the difference be?
People think that when he consecrated it, that he could only do it in his English.
How will people know that?
So it's interesting. How would people know? And what's he right? So it sounds like people were yentas back then, right? According to the Mishnah, it sounds like people were yentas. We think today people are yentas. People then were yentas. They were not such yentas because we can. Everything is there for us, right? Everything is accessible for us. We can be yentas without bothering you. Then you had to be a yenta. So it sounds like everybody was a yenta. So what happened? So if you're shachting an ola, which is voluntary, a guy who's watching will have a chashash that what? Maybe you actually consecrated that animal.
Right, you're doing the right thing.
Maybe you're doing the wrong thing because you're taking a consecrated animal, you're shafting it outside the Beis HaMikdash. But they're going to assume that the animal, what? They're going to assume that the animal was consecrated, right? You might think that it was consecrated at the time that I slaughtered it, and they'll think that consecrated animals, again, can be slaughtered outside the Beis HaMikdash and can be eaten, right? But if something can't be brought voluntarily, so then what? They're only consecrated, even if I go ahead and I consecrate an ola, what happens to it? It becomes consecrated. What if I consecrate an animal for chatas, but I didn't do a sin? Nothing. So everybody knows when I sin. So if I go ahead and I take an animal and I shecht it, and everybody knows that I didn't do a sin, then nobody's going to think that that animal is consecrated. They're going to ignore me like I'm a meshugana, because why are you shechting a chatas when you didn't sin? Why are you shechting an asham tole when you didn't sin? I know exactly how many animals you have in your thing. You had no bechors yesterday. You have no bechors in your flock this season yet. We're keeping track. So if you shecht and you say, I'm shechting this l'shem yichud bechor, people are going to think you're crazy. And they're going to say, he's not shechting. The guy's off his rocker. He's not shechting an animal that was consecrated. That's not a bechor. He didn't have any animals that were born this year. Therefore, they're going to totally ignore anything you're doing. You can eat it because nobody cares. If I'm doing a l'shem meiser, we know you're meiser. You didn't make a lot of money this year. We know you don't have meiser. We know that that animal's not meiser. So anything that's a chova, people are going to know. If people are going to know and they see you doing it and they know that you shouldn't be doing it, then lemaisa what? Then lemaisa they're not going to have any yami. That's why the Gemara is going to say in a second that if people know that you sinned, then chatas would not be on this list. Because if people know you sinned and you need to bring a chatas, then we need to be worried that people are going to know you have to bring a chatas, and they're going to see what? That you brought a chatas. They were going to be worried that they're going to think that you consecrated that chatas, and therefore, lemaisa, we have to be worried and you're not going to be able to eat it. But what about the first part, the first list? What's the first list? The first list are all these voluntary things. Nobody's going to say, well, you're not chayiv to bring a korban. It doesn't matter. I'm allowed to bring an ola whenever I want. So we're afraid that if I bring an ola, what's going to happen? I'm going to say, l'shem yichul kucha brichu ola. You're going to be watching me, and you're going to think, what? Well, the Rabbi Spitz consecrated this animal. He's shouting a consecrated animal outside of the Beis HaMikdash. First of all, he's chayiv kares, and B, he's eating it. Seemingly, you're allowed to eat it. But they're not going to think that about a chatas, because they know that what you're doing is a bunch of baloney, and therefore, they're going to ignore you. That's the difference.
How's Shem Pesach fit in there?
Zak the Gemara. Rabbi's question. L'shem Pesach seems to be something that's a chova. Even an Asham Talai seems to be a chova. Asham Talai is only if you sinned. People are going to know whether you did a maybe sin or not. They know everything about you. Says in Gemara, Hashoche l'shem ola. If I shach for an ola, so what's the whole chashash here? Why can't I eat it even though the korban midaraisa was good? It's because of maras ayin. We're afraid that people are going to see me and they're going to think that I consecrated it, even though I know I didn't, because I would never consecrate an animal and bring it outside the Beis HaMikdash. Maybe I shouldn't have brought any animal, but okay. Lamaisa, I brought a non-consecrated animal. People are going to think that it was consecrated, and you're allowed to eat a consecrated animal. Says Gemara, Asham Toloi bar nidar v'nidafu. But an Asham Toloi is not something that's voluntary. It's something that you bring when you maybe did a sin. So if somebody sees me bringing an Asham Toloi, they're going to ignore me because they know that I didn't maybe do a sin. They've been watching me all day. They know that I've been kosher all day. Says the Gemara, why in that case is the meat forbidden? Nobody's going to think that I consecrated it. Says Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan Hamani, no, Rabbi Eliezer, it's Rabbi Eliezer says the Amar Misnadev Adam Asham Tali B'chol Yom. No, an Asham Tali actually isn't a dava. Because I can bring an Asham Tali anytime I want, because assumption is that I'm always doing something that might be wrong. So if I want to bring every single morning, bring an Asham Tali and say, chances are, Rabbi, or chances are, God, that I did something that probably maybe would have been a sin. So Lamaisa and Asham Toli is also an eder and a dava. Again, once it's in the voluntary category, we have to assume that the people are going to look at you and say, well, you were consecrated it. Pesach bar nidar v'nidafu. Berman's question, I understand that Pesach is not something that you could donate or vow. A Pesach is something that's a Pesach is something that you have to bring. So if you bring it on the 14th day of Nisan, then what? If you bring it on the 14th day of Nisan, people are going to say you bring a Korban Pesach outside the Beis Mikdash. If you bring it on the 14th day of Shvat, people are going to say, what's wrong with you? You can't bring a Korban Pesach, and they're going to ignore you. Says the Gemara, no. Amar Voshia, Shani Pesach, Kol Hashana Kula. You could set aside a Pesach anytime, because what happens if you bring a Pesach the rest of the year? What do we treat it as? A Shlamim. So Lamaisa, if you bring Korban Pesach the rest of the year, it's going to be usher to eat because we're going to assume that it was a Shlamim. It's a voluntary Korban Shlamim. And therefore, Lamaisa, we have to be Choshesh for other people going to see you bringing the Korban Pesach. Even though you're announcing Korban Pesach, they're going to know you're announcing a Shlamim. You're announcing that you bring a voluntary Shlamim. People should be Choshesh that you consecrated it. And Lamaisa, you're allowed to eat consecrated meat outside the Beis Mikdash. Amar Biyane, Loshanu Ela Tamimin. He says this whole discussion of forbidding animals that I brought, voluntary animals, is only when they're tamimim. Of a bali mum and made a yediyah. If somebody sees me shechting a bal mum, even though I couldn't bring it in the temple, if I bring a bal mum as an ola outside the temple, they're going to know that I didn't consecrate it because it's a bal mum, and therefore I can eat it. Says Rabbi Yochanan Amar filu bali mum and nami. No, even a bal mum of an ola or one of these other voluntary sacrifices is going to be a problem. Zimnin dirami le'midi amum of velo yediyah. Because even if it's a bal mum, it might be covered over, and people won't realize it as a mum. Hashoche l'shem chatas. Amar Rabbi Yochanan lo shanu ela she'eno mechuyev chatas. Again, when we said that it's okay if there's something that you're shechting l'shem chatas, so then what? It's okay to eat it because people know that you didn't consecrate it because they know that you didn't do a sin. However, Lamaisa, if what? That's only if you're not mechuyev chatas. That's when people are going to think you're crazy. They know all the sins you do. We're keeping track. Aval mechuyev chatas. But if you're chayiv to bring a chatas, if you're chayiv to bring a chatas, then enachanami. If you shech the chatas outside the Beis Hamikdash, an unconsecrated animal, you cannot eat it. Why? Because at the end of the day, we're going to be worried that people are going to see you shechting the chatas, which they know that you have to bring, and they're going to assume that you sacrificed it and you had consecrated beforehand. V'halo karmer l'shem chatasi. But the guy never said that I'm bringing l'shem chatasi. Amar bevo enachanami be'omer l'shem chatasi. So again, if I bring a chatas and I didn't have a sin, I can eat it because everybody knows that I'm crazy. But if I sinned, which everybody knows I did, if I sinned and I bring a chatas, then I cannot eat it, assuming I say l'shem chatasi. If I say that I'm bringing this l'shem chatasi, I cannot eat it because people are going to know that I sinned. They're going to see that I'm bringing it for my sin, and they're going to be worried that maybe I consecrated it, and it's going to be marasayin. People are going to think you could eat a consecrated animal. L'shem t'mura, again, when we say that I could eat a t'mura that I shecht, and people are going to think I'm crazy, that's only when I don't have any animals. They know exactly how many animals I have in my house. So if they know I don't have any other animals in my house, and I say I'm bringing this as a t'mura, what do you mean you're t'mura? You're crazy. You can't bring a t'mura if you don't have another animal. T'mura, by definition, is substituting another animal. So if you don't have another animal in your house, you can do it, you can eat it afterwards because people think you're crazy. They know you never consecrated it. So everybody knows exactly how many animals you have in your house. But if you have another animal in your house, then you can't eat it if you shechted l'shem t'mura because people might think that what? You're actually shechting a t'mura. Says more of a lokam l'shem t'mura zivchi, but he never said I'm bringing it as my t'mura. Enachanami amar vivo ba'omer l'shem t'mura zivchi. He says I'm bringing l'shem t'mura zivchi as my own t'mura, and he has another animal in his house. Then enachanami you cannot eat it. Zeh klal lasuye mai. So what does zeh klal come to include? What case would I have thought that if it's voluntary, I would have thought that I'm allowed to eat it, and it has to tell me zeh klal I can't eat it? And what case would I have thought that's not voluntary, that I would have thought what? That I wouldn't have known that I'm allowed to eat it? I might have thought you can't eat it even though it's not voluntary. Says in lasuye mai lasule olas nazir. The ola of a nazir. That means if a nazir brings an ola, so lamaisa, if I see somebody slaughtering an animal for a nazir ola, so what? So lamaisa, he's not allowed to eat it. What's the pshat? Why would you think he's allowed to eat it? I understand. What's the pshat? Mao desema. You might have thought, halo nadar. He did not vow to become a nazir. Ema nadar bitziner. Again, what's this talking about? The ola of a nazir, if it's shechted for the nazir's ola, it's prohibited. Why? The Mishnah said that if I take an ola, it's invalid because we said it's voluntary. So what might you have thought? You might have said that this guy did not become a nazir. He doesn't know that they're a nazir, right? If he were, then they would have noticed. Therefore, what? They're going to realize that it's not consecrated. Says, no, Amar Nadar B'tzina. We have to be worried that people are going to assume that he became a what? He became a Nazir B'tzina. Since we have to assume that he became Nazir B'tzina, when somebody sees somebody else shechting an animal and they say that this is l'shem, the Olas Nazir, we have to assume the worst, that people are going to look at it and say, oh, he must have consecrated it. I didn't see him become a Nazir. He must have become a Nazir in private. Therefore, it's a real Korban Ola of a Nazir. And Lamaisa, he must have consecrated it. And Lamaisa, if we let him eat it, we're going to assume that you're allowed to eat olas that are brought outside the Beis Hamikdash.
And that they saw him drinking wine during the 30 days?
So they saw him drinking wine, then seemingly it wouldn't be a problem, I would guess. V'she'eno nidar v'nidav, if it's not vowed or donated, lasuye olas yoledes. The ola of a yoledes, that if somebody brings an ola for a woman who gave birth, or she miscarries, she has to bring an ola. So if a person brings an ola and says, I'm slaughtering the animal as an ola for a woman who has given birth, so we don't have to assume that, people are going to assume that it was consecrated. Why not? Amar Balazar, lo shanu ala she'ein lo isha. This is where he has no wife. Well, if he's not married, and he says he's doing it as a woman who gave birth, so people are going to think he's wacky. So obviously they're going to go ahead and they're going to ignore him, therefore you can eat it. Aval yesh lo isha, but if he has a wife, then what? Emar lishmahu osa. If he has a wife, then we have to assume that what? That when he shechted it, he was shechting it for his wife that gave birth. If he's shechting it for his wife that gave birth, then he must have consecrated, he might have consecrated it, and therefore he's not allowed to eat it. V'alo karma l'shem olas ishti, but he didn't say that I'm doing it for my Shem olas ishi. That means even if he's married, people are not going to think that he slaughtered it and that it's consecrated because he didn't say l'shem olas ishti. No, be'omer l'shem olas ishti. When he says l'shem olas ishti. So again, the case where it's going to be usher is where the guy is married and he says l'shem olas ishti. But if he's not married, then l'maisa it's going to be okay. Says Gemara pshita. It's obvious that it's only going to be a problem if he's married. If he's not married, so what's the havamina that he went ahead and he shechted something for his wife? Says the Gemara, Mao desema im isa diyalda kala havale. No, we're talking about a case where the guy's married. But if his wife had given birth, then everybody would know. Therefore, if I didn't hear that his wife gave birth, so we have to assume that what? We have to assume that he's lying. So if I didn't hear that your wife gave birth and I see you bringing a korban, I have to assume that you're lying, and therefore what? I have to assume that it's nothing. Says the Gemara, no, kamash malan, emar apule apil, that even if I never heard that your wife got married, even if I never heard that your wife had a baby, what? We have to be nervous that nevertheless it's going to be usher if the guy's married, because even if people didn't hear that his wife got married, the guy who's watching it would say, oh, his wife must have had a miscarriage. If his wife had a miscarriage and then he's chayiv to bring a korban. If he's chayiv to bring a korban and he's bringing a korban for his wife, even though I didn't hear that she had a baby, l'maisa she must have had a miscarriage. He must have consecrated this animal. If we let him eat it, then we're going to assume that you can go ahead and you can eat consecrated animals. Shkoyach, good chodesh, everyone.